By the way, for those of you who don't know this, Keith Williams is the Georgia Power Colocation Manager, and he knows a heck of a lot more about this than I do. So I'll do my very best to parrot what I've heard him say in the past. But the key on this is a very high-level overview of a project that recently launched on Varasset for Georgia Power. And I know that several of the co-locators, we don't call them attachers, we call them co-locators because it's on unregulated assets, have recently gone through training, and so the system is up and live. So next. Okay, so at a very high level, the goals of the project were to make available unregulated assets for co-location attachments, obviously with a pretty heavy focus on 5G and smart cities coming up, and generate revenue from that, while very specifically insulating the regulated ratepayers from any costs. The goal is to make a nice, easy-to-use web portal that allows co-locators, you know, your typical 5G folks, Verizon and AT&T and Crown Castle and Mobility and so forth, to log on and easily initiate permitting attachment requests and follow the workflow through perhaps a little more intricate permitting process than you typically see on the regulated joint use side, and particularly as you get into other types of assets. So initially starting with streetlights, but also getting into transmission facilities and so forth. There are many different variants to that workflow. Another goal is to provide timely automated permitting, so allow the co-locators to work in bulk and very quickly to accommodate their very aggressive timelines for both the make-ready and the build-out, and also long-term maintenance of the facilities. Have an accurate billing process for the customers, who are, of course, the co-locators. And as I started to mention there before, once the co-location device has been attached, there's an ongoing maintenance effort that has to be tracked through the system. And then again, keeping a very clear line between regulated and unregulated assets and making sure there's insulation between the two for the ratepayers. And if by any chance that was Keith who just joined, feel free to speak up.
Yeah, it's me. I just joined.
Hey, Keith, I'm doing my best to cover this. So if you, I don't know if you joined in time to hear my effort, but if you want to fill in some blanks, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. I called in on the phone, so let me join the GoToMeeting so I can see the presentation.
Okay. And I'll just pause it there for just a second for the rest of the attendees. As you know, we had to send out a secondary invitation, so I imagine that that's going to cause a few people to be late logging on.
All right, so I can see it now.
Okay, so I'll walk through these, and Matthew, if you can click on the next slide, please. And take it away.
All right, I can just sort of take it from here. And so with our co-location program here at Georgia Power, we have really four major areas that we're looking at with our program and what we're going to use as far as with Varasset, as far as working with our customers. One is for small cell, and that's dealing with the co-location outdoor lighting. That part of the program is already up and running. We have done some installs already. And also we went live with this part of Varasset about 3 weeks ago. So what we're doing right now in the process is some of the sites that we have already constructed. We are working with those customers. We're doing training. We sort of put in that backlog information. And now they are actively putting in their new sites. And so really our goal with this is, and I've been on the other side when I work with mobility, is for the customer, they sort of want a one-stop shop where they can see where they're at as far as making application, where does each site stand with the process, and then also if there are any action items, how to follow up. I know my experience in working with other utilities on the other side, sometimes you're doing a lot of this by email, and then as the volume picks up, and as a utility company, our back end as far as support are covered in so many areas, it's easy for paperwork to get lost in emails and in transactions. But with this one, with Varasset, we have all our key partners, back office partners. They're able to access what they're responsible for, process, and then update. So this is really very helpful in our approach. Our phase two of Varasset is going to consist of our communication towers, which we already have 300 existing Georgia Power towers. We have 260 of them that are available for tenants. We also have existing tenants on there. So that part of the process will be interesting because we'll put all of our existing tenants in Varasset from a status standpoint, but then also we will work to get our new ones processed in. And once again, we'll be able to follow that process chart, and the customer will be able to see where all their sites that they've made application for stand, and all supporting document will be housed in Varasset. And then for land lease where we're basically leasing dirt for towers, it will follow the same process. And then transmission, it's just sort of a bigger version of what we're doing with outdoor lighting, but this with co-location for macro sites that we'll be doing. So the whole thing is that's really going to work with sort of this consolidated database is that if I have a customer, that not only has small cell deployment, but also has macro sites and tower sites, they will be able to see all of their assets that they have with Georgia Power in the Varasset tool. So that's even taking it beyond just small cell that we really like with this, that we want the AT&Ts of the world and Verizons and T-Mobiles of the world to be able to see all of the assets that they have from the non-regulated side with Georgia Power, to be able to see all of them in one system. Now, I know one question some people ask, and I know David mentioned this earlier, is that there is a solid line between what is regulated from an FCC standpoint and then what is unregulated. And for my side of the business, they will be seeing all of the unregulated side as far as what they have with Georgia Power. They will go into the regulated side of the business, have a Varasset tool also, and the regulated side, their information is not merged with ours. Any question on that part?
I think we have a question from Jeff Kent. Dave,
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. The question is, could you expand on the reference to mix of regulated and unregulated on the outdoor lighting item?
So when we say mix of regulated and unregulated, we're not talking about FCC regulated. We're talking about our Public Service Commission regulated. And so when you see that regulated and unregulated, it's from a PSC standpoint. Bottom line is that we are allowing co-location on PSC regulated lighting structures. And we have an agreement with our PSC that they're allowing us to do a 50-50 split on what we make on this between the regulated side as far as the customers that are part of the PSC, and then unregulated lighting, which our shareholders get the majority of the profits. So that's what we mean by that. And that's something that we have to address as far as when we do these. We just have to identify what's regulated and what's unregulated, because we have to use a different type of counting process as far as when we look at our revenues and net income.
It looks like that answered the question.
All right. Okay, we can go to the next one. So the challenges that we have with this program sits what we call on our unregulated side of the business, our below the line, which is our products and services within our marketing group. And so one of the challenges with this is that we're new, and so you always are trying to gauge. It came out of our product development, and as you're putting together your initiating plan. The question is, how do you ramp up your resources versus the workload? Because you're trying to figure that out. So one of the challenges one of the challenges we're facing is that, we had a little bit of a lull, but now things are really ramping up. And for every resource that I add, especially from an FTE standpoint, that's something that has to be fully funded in this program. And so we always struggle with, we know in the first year that we're going to be in the red. And then as we go into the outer years, that's where we'll really show profit margins and our net income. But that's a challenge because you're trying to make your best guess on when to bring in resources. And right now, we're sort of borrow, begging, and stealing from other departments to support us, to help us as we get this launch, because we also want to make sure that we feel comfortable with our forecast as far as bringing on new resources. Aggressive deadlines, just there's a lot of moving pieces. Even though my group is the front end that faces the customer, there are 6 to 7 departments that we're working with to deliver this product. And because this is from a standpoint from an FCC unregulated, we do set our pricing for this that is higher than what is required by the FCC. So one of the things that the selling point with us is that our goal with the non-FCC regulated asset is we have to beat timelines that a lot of the telecoms are facing in dealing with FCC regulated assets. So we set aggressive timelines. I know with the new FCC order, I think roughly if everything goes to plan, the new timeline from application to install is around 6 months. So we know for us to have people saying it's worthwhile to invest money on our side of the business, we need to have a timeline that's around 3 months from application to install or less. This one about incomplete light pole data and GIS, that has a lot to do. We have a large inventory, but we also acquire some other cities' lighting structures. That's a very common process where cities just don't want to fool with it anymore. They would rather sell the assets to us and then lease. So as we bring those on board, getting all that information in our database is always critical. So right now, I think out of the 900,000 lighting assets that we know we have about 650 to 700 in our database and looking to get the additional ones put in our database. So we don't have the luxury of just having somebody out and doing a full inventory, but that's just something that we'll manage as we go along. As we talked a little bit about before, asset classification, from a PSC standpoint, we have to identify what is regulated and what is unregulated, because that dictates what the accounting process we will use for revenues and net income. Communication towers, communication towers, and they are not in our database. And one reason, the reason why we're working on this is because in the past, our communication towers were managed at the Southern Company level, and so that was across all operating companies. And now we're breaking that down to where it's going to be managed by the operating company level. So it's just a matter of getting our data out, and they're just old school. They've been tracking all this stuff in spreadsheets, and we did not aggressively market our existing towers. And then also Southern Company, we do have a telecom company, so it's gone back and forth. We've given our towers to Southern Link, and then they've given them back. So it's been a back and forth. So it's just a matter of modernizing our data as far as from a GIS standpoint on communication towers. Uncertainty about co-locators' requirements and priorities. I just think a big part of that is that with our program, even though we have gotten a lot of positive feedback on our program is still one of 3 options that a telecom company could go. They can go, if I'm talking small cell, they can go on existing municipality structures. They can do new pole structures, or they can go with us. If you're talking about someone like AT&T also has their own structures. So it's hard to get a feel. And I think when we attended a meeting in New Mexico, I think that was the biggest question almost all municipalities and utility companies had is we keep hearing about this big wave of sites that are coming, but we haven't seen it yet. We just hear about it, and we know once we truly go to 5G that there's going to be a mass deployment. But to get that information out of the customer sometimes, and sometimes they're unsure too, as far as which options they're going to take. So a lot of times when we do get information, it's last minute, and can we make it happen? So that's roughly what that bullet means. Any questions on that point? If not, this is just a good overview of the customer's journey as far as with our program. And I'm not going to read all the details, but the whole goal of that is to make it as seamless as possible. As I mentioned earlier on, once they have their master agreement with us, then it's a matter of just doing SLAs and site-by-site installments. And it just shows you through that all of this is going to be managed through the Varasset system as our one-stop shop database. And then, as I mentioned also, that it's covering multiple assets by Georgia Power. And then once all the requirements are met and the customer approves, and when I say the customer approves, we'll go back and take all their design information, do structural analysis, and then give approval that the site is good for co-location. We also give them what the make-ready costs, because we want to give them the option of is this something that they want to continue through the process with. And then they can either accept or reject. If they do reject, part of our process is we will try to help identify another site. Or if we reject, for whatever reason, we cannot co-locate on that site due to site conditions or something else, we will try to help them find an alternative, working with them with their site rings, and take it from there. And then execute. Also, we do all our notification as far as what the payments are and when they will be invoiced. So the whole thing is to make the process as seamless as possible through Varasset so that our customer has a good experience with us, because we feel that's where you get that repeat business. If a customer struggles with the process, then they're more likely to go with some of the other options or go to whichever pathway is a pathway of least resistance. All right. So, okay, this is a phased implementation. In the phased implementation, what our goal is that phase one, we have done the full launch on phase one, so we're up and going on that. We have trained 2 of our customers. They have master agreements. We're getting ready to train a 3rd customer. They are already uploading all of their data and information. So, and with any new application and process, you will have a few bumps in the road, but we've been able to resolve them very quickly. Now, the great thing with phase 2 is that we're taking all the stuff that we learned from phase 1, and now we're going to apply it to our phase 2, which includes transmission towers, communication towers, and then land.
Hey, Keith, this is Dave Cheney. One thing I want to throw in here, I made an edit yesterday, and apparently I forgot to save. The phase 3 was intended to refer to Alabama Power, which we don't have that one finalized yet, but the thought is that that would follow right behind, or perhaps shortly after phase 1. So,
yes. And for us, that's common. We work with our operating companies and share a lot of information. I can tell you under the Southern Company umbrella, a lot of times Georgia Power, we're a lot of times on the front end of that. And then we definitely share this with our other sister operating companies, because we're still managing up to the Southern Company umbrella. All right. Thank you all.
we sure appreciate that, Keith. And now Matthew's getting himself queued up for the next step here, so just bear with us for a moment.
Yeah, so what's going to be up next? Again, thank you, Keith. We're going to talk a little bit about Ike GPS integration with Varasset. We have got Mike McGill on and Blake on as well. You guys want to confirm that you're on the phone at least?
Yeah, we're here, Dave. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind giving us control of the screen, then we'll take it from there.
Let's let's finish. Sorry, before we do that, Matthew was going to follow up and show a little bit of co-location stuff here to kind of show you there's reality behind the scenes on Keith's presentation.
Roger that. We'll stand by.
Thank you. So I'm resharing my screen now. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the Varasset solution that we customized for co-location. And I'm going to be mostly sticking with the customer perspective because, as Keith mentioned, really we're focusing in on the usability of Varasset and how easy we can make it for the customer to go ahead and start the co-location process and work through it, and also exemplify a little bit about our new workflow engine that's behind the scenes in Varasset 6 as well. So I'm logged into a demo version of the co-location site. Some test data just to show the functionality of the system. So this is the front page when a customer first logs into co-location. So it doesn't show the full functionality of what Varasset is capable. We are only exposing the modules and things that a certain customer would see, and they can only see their applications, their requests as well. So this is the starting point. You can see that me as a customer already does have one application that I've been working on just in my workflows, but I'm going to start over again and create a new request and start from there. So there's a couple different ways to start the request process. You can start within Varasset by go ahead and going to requests and clicking new request. That will bring you to the starting record for the request. We see that since customers like a visual representation of the data, sometimes they'll start from the actual map itself. So we provisioned, or we assisted GPC in provisioning a web application map with our partnership with the Esri applications and with Esri as well. So in the upper hand corner of Varasset, we have this maps module, and depending on the different sites or different maps that you want visible to the customers, this can be adjusted within Varasset as well. So I actually have a licensee poll selection map already available and up and running. So that opens in a new tab, and from here, the customer can see all the sites available to them. So I can go ahead and zoom in on whatever area I want a new co-location site. And from this tool here, I can go ahead and select however many sites I want to take a look at. So I'm going to just go ahead and select this line of polls so that I can get a closer look at these sites to see which one I want for my request. So after I select those guys, I can go ahead and select this action within the web map of Open in Varasset. And that will allow me to actually open all the assets that I have selected from the poll selection map in Varasset. So from here, from this data grid, I can kind of confirm which sites I've selected, and I can either select all of them or just select one of them. I'm going to select all of them and start my request process from here. So I can go ahead and create a request. I can determine what company I'm working under, and then also if there's multiple workflows that are available to me, I can choose which workflow I want to go through. So if there's multiple paths or different kinds of small cell sites, we can have different workflows. So I can go ahead and hit create. So this is the request record, and again, we've partnered with GPC to make sure that all the fields here signify some key element or key information that the customer will need to be putting into the system to help them through their process. So a customer request ID, and then a description. And then now I can have all these fields that are available to me to give GPC a better idea of exactly what I want to install and what site I want. So I can go and choose my requested install date. I'm going to push it out a while. Is fiber required? From this requested asset dropdown, you can see that the 4 assets that I selected, or 4 potential sites I selected, is in this drop-down menu now. and I can choose the one that I've decided that I want to attach on or request against. That will leave me with my requested asset coordinates, and now I can fill in more detail to help GPC review the site and perform their site visit. So I can put in some placement information, so top of antenna, and I can put in like, what do I want to put here? Oh, like 31 feet. And I can, this is just a text box, I can add whatever information I want there. I can put in the install height, additional equipment specs I can put in here, one antenna. Voltage codes, if I know the voltage code, I can put that in there. The total equipment kilowatts, so I can put 144. Okay, and then even below here, I have more options to signal more details about the site. So voltage requirements, I'm just going to go ahead and put test info. And let me just copy that down. And lastly, what I can do to assist with the process too is I can even add some file attachments to this small cell request. So I can go into the file attachments. I have some file attachments here. I can go ahead and drag and drop that file. And now my construction drawings are attached to this request as well. So I have all the information that is needed from me to submit my application. So I can go ahead and say advanced workflow, request for small cell, and hit OK. And as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, we can see that this request is now open. The workflow task is now in the enter asset information and assign additional resources, and it's assigned to the GPC team. So from here, this request has been submitted to the GPC team to review and to assign resources and continue with the co-location process. So to wrap up here, I'm going to go ahead and log out real quick as customer. And let me go ahead and log in as an internal user. And now I can see in my workflow grid, I have a new task as an internal user to assign resources to that request. So I can go in here, I can take a look at all the information that the customer entered. I can go ahead and take a look at the file attachment that they attached to get a better idea of what they're talking about. And I can assign the resources from my side in order to continue this co-location process. And as the process continues, we do have a workflow engine working in the background to assign the tasks to the appropriate parties as needed. I can show you a quick overview of that. Under this workflow tab, we have what we call our workflow engine, which guides the process. All right, I see a question popped in. Go ahead and read it out loud. Will the system identify minimum required information to be entered prior to allowing application submission? Yes, so we partner with our clients to determine which fields are necessary, and our workflow engine can ensure that those fields are filled out, and if they're not, it will not allow them to actually advance the workflow. So an error message would pop up informing them of what information is needed. So if I go here under the workflow, I can show you visually what that looks like. If I go ahead and hit this diagram button, I can see in the background exactly the workflow process we're working through. So you'll notice up here the submit application, that is done by the customer, and highlighted in red is the current step that we're on. So we do have some validation of required fields. We can validate account status, so we can prevent people from submitting requests if they're suspended from our system, for example. And throughout this process, we have a lot of those kind of validations, and you can quickly see this co-location process that GPC and Varasset has partnered with, and it is quite in-depth, but so I won't go into any more details beyond that, but the system will help guide them through this process to make it really easy for customers to request co-location sites and to get them up and running. Are there any additional questions at this point in time? All right. Well, on that note,
my apologies for moving us ahead, but yeah, Mike McGill from Ike GPS and Blake Collins from Ike GPS as well. Mike's going to do a little intro to Ike. Blake's going to show some things on their side, and then Matthew will again follow with some things on the Varasset side. So Mike, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave, and thank you for allowing us to be part of this edition of your user group meeting. We appreciate it. Waiting just for a second while we get screen control. Looks like that's being handed over. And I'm joined today by Blake Collins. Blake is one of our solution engineers here at Ike GPS, closely with Varasset and Cox Communications on the integration that we're going to talk about today. By way of introduction, and in the context of joint use or new attachment permitting, Ike GPS is a company that leverages our unique technology and our service branded as Ike Analyze to help our customers attach faster or get through the new attachment permitting process faster. We do that by delivering, again, our unique hardware and Ike Analyze solution to the attacher. And the ultimate result of that is a record that helps the pole owner review the attachment permit request and approve that request more efficiently. So just to give you an example of what that looks like, this is an example of what an Ike record looks like, but essentially we're focused on helping the attacher produce the information faster and at a lower cost, and delivering to the pole owner what we refer to as photo verifiable accuracy, so that you can have an accurate record of the asset as it exists in the field and as it is proposed to exist in the field with the new attachment, and then leveraging that asset to create what is referred to as a digital twin, so that the asset as it exists, or the record of the asset as it exists in the field, is an exact match to the record as it is rendered in pole load analysis. In this example, we're showing an example of a digital twin in pole foreman. Ultimately, we want that richness of data to serve as a source of truth, but then also serve other systems in the workflow, in this case, Varasset. And the workflow in the case of Varasset is interesting, and Blake will show you an example of this, in that we're demonstrating the ability to pull information out of Varasset, create a job, and then make that information available to an Ike, so that the information can then be enhanced with the Ike record and then ultimately put back into the Varasset database. The key takeaway here is that attachers are able to provide better information that costs them less to produce, and information by virtue of the reliability and the trustworthiness of that record can help the pole owner approve those new attachment permit requests more efficiently. So with that said, I'm going to hand things over to Blake so he can give you a real world view of what that looks like.
Thanks, Mike. So now what I'm going to do is pull up Ike Office. And so now that I have that pulled up, what we have here is a map of the world. And if I zoom in just a little bit closer here on the United States, this Ike Office account that I'm sharing with you here is an internal account that we use for testing and training and demonstrations such as these. So here on the map, what you'll notice are these different dots, different colors that appear. And what these are jobs, and basically a job is a collection of poles. So as I hover over these different jobs here, you'll notice it's also kind of flagging them, highlighting them over here on the left-hand side, which is our job stack. So a job contains the name of the job, whatever's been chosen in the field, or if we create this job here inside of Ike Office, we can assign the name of this job. Now, as I start to hover over these, you'll notice there's a number in there, and that just indicates the number of polls that exist in that particular job. So if I want to take a closer look at kind of what I have within this job here, I can select on it, and it highlights the different assets here on the map. As I select on these assets, I kind of get a bit of visibility as to what's attached to these assets here on the right-hand side. But if I actually kind of want to go in and see what exactly we have here, I can hover over our photo measure collection icon, and it's going to bring me directly into this job. I'm going to see information such as the poll tags and the branding information, as well as different Ike photos that we have captured and annotated with attachment heights and inventorying basically everything that's attached.
And if I may interject, the reason we're providing this description of what a job looks like in Ike is that's the intersection, the job level is the intersection of our integration with Varasset. And what Blake will show you right now is an example of a job that was created by pulling information from Varasset. Varasset specifically creates a CSV file that we bring into Ike Office to create a job.
So this is the job that we have created, importing information from Varasset. So this particular job only contains GPS locations and poll ID numbers. So what that allows me to do is on my device, this is a screenshot. It's actually a live screen of my Ike 4 device here. I can navigate into the Ike Field app. And currently what you're seeing is this is the only job that exists on my device. If I want to download a job from Ike Office, all I need to do is go to the Get Jobs icon here. And what I get is I am returned a list of all the possible jobs that exist in my account. So the second job there, Blake RT, let's say that I want to download that and add information to it. All I need to do is select that, hit the download icon, and now when I navigate back into my jobs, you'll notice I have that new job in there that I have downloaded directly from Ike Office. I'm then able to open up that job and I can visit any collections that I want, any assets, and I can add information such as photographs, measurements, really anything that I want to. I can do a full inventory. I can update the GPS coordinates. And once I have done that.
And actually just for anyone that's on the call that's not familiar with Ike, I'll just provide a quick introduction. The Ike device is unique in the sense that it is an Android-based device, so it's designed to have a smartphone-like interface so that it's easy for the user to learn and easy for the user easy for an operator to use. The device is unique in that it incorporates mapping grade GPS, laser rangefinder, digital camera, compass and inclinometer, everything you need to not only measure things in the field, but produce something that's unique in the marketplace, which is an Ike photo. And Ike photos are smart photos that can actually be measured on.
Okay, so now that I have updated and kind of added some information to that job, I can then select on it and I can push it back up into Ike Office. Now that that job has been successfully uploaded, I can navigate back into Ike Office here. And what I get is that same job, and then anything that I have added out in the field is now going to be a part of this collection.
And since we weren't able to do a real collection in this demo, Blake, if you wouldn't mind just going back to that record, so to visualize this a little bit, somebody in the field would have received a job, they have a location, and a poll ID for those polls. They go to those polls and then complete the record so that you can see the record on the screen. Blake will bring that up right now. So you have an example of what a completed record looks like. I'm sorry, if you could just bring up a record.
Oh, I'm
like
sorry.
The Ike record. So there we go. So when a record is complete, this is an example of what it looks like. This is a record that was actually completed through our Ike Analyze service. And Blake, if you could just talk through that for a moment.
Right. So what we end up with is calibrated images that we have taken with the Ike device. And those calibrated images we refer to our Ike photos. So an Ike photo allows us to actually assign an attachment height from anything that's in our inventory here. So for example, an attachment height, these do not automatically get populated. Our Ike Analyze team will actually go through, determine things like framing types, conductor sizes, and insulators. And then we can grab this attachment height tool here, and we can locate our conductor and set the appropriate attachment height and move on to the next item. So as I scroll down through my inventory here, you'll notice now we have come through and we have assigned an attachment height for everything. And I can save this poll and move on to the next poll in the project. For the purpose of this demonstration, we've had our Ike Analyze team come through and mark up all of these polls already. So now really what we can do is start to produce different outputs from this data that's been collected and drag some of that information back into Varasset.
Yeah, and in the case or the context of this discussion, I think the outputs that are most relevant is one, our JSON output, because it's the JSON output that is used to have that information reinserted into Varasset. And then the other that might be relevant to people on the call is the output to poll loader analysis. But for the sake of time, we'll skip showing poll loader analysis. Just suffice it to say that it takes a few seconds to go from an Ike record in Ike Office into having a completely rendered poll in your poll load application of choice. And we currently support PollForeman, OCalc Pro, and SpiderCalc. So unless there are any questions, I'll pass it back to Varasset to provide a slightly more detailed view of the integration.
All right, thank you very much. That was really good. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And I'll go ahead and show you the Varasset side of that piece. So again, thank you for reviewing Ike Office and the functionality there and pulling the jobs from Ike Office into a mobile device so that you can perform your inspections out in the field, and then pushing that back into Ike Office in order to complete the composite images, do all your measurements that are needed in Ike Office. So at this point in time now, the files are in Ike Office, and as was alluded to, there are a couple different file formats that you can export your Ike jobs into. The key one for our integration with Ike is their JSON file. So I actually have a sample JSON file that I will be working with. So in Varasset, we do have our assets table here. And if I go ahead and open up my assets, I have all my assets within this demo environment. And I can go ahead and open up any kind of these. Let's go ahead and open up a distribution. Let's not do that one. Let's do just distribution asset. So we can see on the right-hand side that it is a wood power pole. So let's say that this pole actually does have an Ike job against it, and we have exported that Ike job as a JSON file. We do have an additional action button that is available within Varasset to import from Ike GPS. So if I go ahead and click on import from Ike GPS, we have a little drag and drop file that we have available to us. And I have my JSON file right here. If I go ahead and drag and drop that what I'm presented with is some key information that is from the IKE job that you saw in the IKE office. So any kind of pole owner information, when it was collected, who was it collected by, and also we have the ability to look into IKE office and see all the images that are associated with the job. So the composite picture with all the measurements, and also the image as before the measurement, so just the picture itself. So I can do a quick review of that information, say, okay, that looks good. What that will do is actually bring in all the data that was from IKE into Varasset. Now, this being a demo environment, it didn't pull in too much data. Really what we're bringing in right now are the file attachments and the raw JSON file, along with the updated lat long information, because that's pretty standard across IKE Office and IKE jobs. Now, as we partner with different clients for different implementations, IKE is pretty configurable for their forms and what you do want to capture out in the field, and we'll just work with our clients, customers, to ensure that the information that is coming from the IKE form is translated properly into Varasset. So Varasset can even create different findings or work orders as needed, and if there are additional attachments or additional assets that are attached to the pole, we can also bring those in with the correct measurements if needed. So that's the extensible power of this IKE integration. In addition, if we are working on some improvements to integration to be able to pull that in as well, as long as we have a primary key, like a pole identification number or a GUID number, so that we can even automate the pulling in of that data instead of just hitting that action button as well. So we have different options available, and it is extensible as IKE is as well, so that we can make sure that the data that you want is captured within IKE Office, and that is translated into Varasset to keep a historical record of your polls.
Let's, we'll keep moving. Again, if some questions appear, we will address them. Corey, you're up.
Right. My name is Corey. I'm going to be covering a new feature that's going to be coming to the latest version of Varasset. We are going to be integrating WebDAV into Varasset. So just kind of at a high level, I want to discuss what WebDAV is, because it may not mean much to a lot of people. So at a high level, WebDAV is an extension of the HTTP protocol, which allows clients to author and edit documents stored on a remote server. In plain English, for those that aren't too technical, this means the ability to work on common file types such as PowerPoint, Word, Excel, etc., which are stored on a remote server from your local client machine, while maintaining a history of edits and authors, all without needing to download the document onto your local computer. The benefit that this really gives you is the ability to work collaboratively on documents. This way of file management encourages a collaborative work environment, and combined with Varasset's file attachment module and row-level security, can be leveraged to provide an easy way for your employees and external contractors to share information and work together to design solutions for your projects. One of the other benefits provided by WebDAV is it also provides utilities for resolving merge conflicts should you have multiple users editing the same document simultaneously. And it's all managed by the server on the back end. Users are not required to handle any of those merge conflicts on their own, and it's all managed by the system itself. I do have a little brief diagram there, just kind of explaining at a high level how this would work. You could have many users editing the same file at the same time, and again, when they submit their edits, the server, Varasset, will handle the merging of those edits, and it'll also keep track of a version history along with who made edits when, so you get a comprehensive view of the history of the document. In Varasset, we will be incorporating the WebDAV technology into our base file attachment module. This means all file attachments uploaded to the Varasset system, which support WebDAV, can utilize the new feature. There are some settings that I would just want to kind of briefly go over. I mentioned that there's different merge policies, and I'll just kind of briefly discuss what those are and how those work. So at a high level, these are the 4 merge policies that we're going to be supporting. We have a rebase merge. Basically, if you have multiple people editing the same file and they all commit, you're going to get, each user is going to get their own version. And I'll be demoing at the end of this, and I'll kind of show what that looks like in the front end and how you can manage those versions through the front end. There's a nice UI that you can leverage to kind of manage all of this through the front end of Varasset. You have a cancel my merge, which means if you're editing a document and another user is editing the document, your merge will get canceled and they'll take theirs. You have a cancel their merge policy, which is the opposite of that, where it'll keep your version and cancel the other party's version. So it's basically take the first one to start editing. And a reject merge, which just rejects everybody's edits if multiple people are editing the same file. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up a brief demo. And this is a sandbox environment that I'm going to be showing, so this isn't incorporated into a final project yet. Just kind of forewarning, so this isn't exactly how it will appear in its final form, but functionality will be identical. I'm going to go ahead and log in as an administrator here. And I have a few sample ticket records. As you can see here, I have an attachment field. Again, we are going to be incorporating WebDAV into our base file attachment module in Varasset. So I can simply just upload a file here. So I have this test document. It's just a Word document. And I can see here that the file extension, I'm going to go ahead and just open this document. Now with WebDAV, it's going to automatically detect which application should be used to open this document. Now, because this is a Word document, it's going to open in Microsoft Word. And it's going to ask me for credentials. Now, these are just my Varasset credentials. Okay, and you can see here that it opened the Word document. Now, this is not downloaded onto my local machine. I am editing this live on the server. So I can go ahead and make an edit. I'll go ahead, and you can notice the save button here. It actually has a little sync, and that is typical of WebDAV. So what that means is it's going to sync my copy with the copy on the server. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Okay. And it looks like there is a conflict, and this just means that there was potentially somebody else editing this file. So if I go to resolve, you can see it's highlighting the changes that I made. And it's asking me if I want to accept my changes. So I'm going to go ahead and accept my changes. All right. And we'll go ahead and hit save. If I click on you'll notice here that there is a version of the file attachments. So I click on this. You can see all the previous versions. This is a test document that we've been testing with before this demo. So there are actually 8 versions of this one document. And you can open up each version independently. If you want to bring an old version to the front, so thus kind of negating all of the versions added afterwards, there's this copy to head option, which would just create a new version based off the version that you have selected. And you can see here the version number just updates as I do that. You have the option to download different versions, so you can select them in this grid. You have a download option. You can download the file as is. You can download it as a zip. You also have the ability to select multiple versions and download them all as, again, as is, or package them all into a zip file, download all the versions to your local box for editing.
Where can you see there's a chat?
There's a question, so I was waiting for a good time to read it out. So just reading out the question that we have right here. Is there a conflict dialog where multiple versions can be viewed before deciding which to commit? So we did see a little bit of that in the actual Word document for some conflicts. Is there anywhere else that's available? Or
as far as seeing the other edits in the document itself, that would be up to the application. So Word, for example, we did see that where it did show my edits. It did show conflicting edits there as well. that is up to the application itself, or the third-party application to handle showing you those merge conflicts. You do get error messages and warnings through the Varasset side. If you were to upload, depending on the merge policy that you select, you will get different types of warnings or error messages. But it is a full WebDAV implementation, meaning that Word and other Microsoft applications will work with it and show you any merge conflicts in those applications themselves. And really quickly, before I wrap up, I do just want to show just some of the administration settings for WebDAV that we support. So under our application properties, those are just a menu basically for administrators to set up different properties and settings for the different modules and things within Varasset. You'll see here that we have a WebDAV section. One of the more important settings is the WebDAV application settings, and this allows you to map different file extensions and different protocols to different applications. So if you don't want Word documents to open up default in Microsoft Word, you can change that here. So as an administrator, you can kind of dictate what's the first go-to application for different file types. You can also set up different lock timeouts. So if you don't have a version policy to handle the different merge conflict, you can also do you can set up locks, so you can lock a file for editing if one user has it open. And the whole versioning piece of this is also optional. If you want to just have one file version rather than supporting the update and the whole versioning functionality, you can turn that off, and that's where you would then introduce a lockout. I think with that, I think that wraps up WebDAV. Again, this is going to be coming into the latest version of Varasset. I don't think we have a solid release date for that yet, but it is an up-and-coming feature. We believe it's going to introduce, again, the ability to work more collaboratively with file attachments, which should come in handy when working with, again, external contractors, uploading any design documents and things like that. You can work together editing the same document, and it just kind of opens up another channel of communication.
And there's version 6.5?
I believe, yes, 6.5 is the version of Varasset that we'll be adding this to.
Cool. Thank you, Corey. Are there any other questions relating to WebDAV functionality other than that conflict dialog? And hopefully we answer that conflict dialog question. If not, let us know, and we can better answer it now or at a later date.
If there are no questions, this is actually a really cool feature that we've been looking forward to for a while, so we're pretty excited about rolling this one out.
Just waiting for a little bit more for any questions, and then are you putting up the slide? Okay, perfect. And then can you unmute everyone too if you have that power?
I can attempt to. Yes.
Okay.
1 second while I take over again.
Basically, we're going to wrap up here in just a minute or two, but I'm wondering, first of all, do you have any more questions about any of the things we've covered today? That would be my first question, and I'll wait for a moment to see if there are any. And since I'm hearing none, my last question for today would be, are there things in Varasset that you would like us to cover in future user groups? We're doing 3 of these a year, typically. The next one should probably be in late January, and the next one in April or May, and then back here in the fall. But if you have any topics, I'd love to have that. So my email and contact information is there. If you don't ask today, that's fine. But if you would ask, or if you have some ideas going forward, email me with those. That would be helpful. Well, since I'm not hearing anything, I'm going to just say thank you for your attendance today. And obviously, call us, contact us if you have other questions as we go. We want to serve you well. So thanks for your time today.